There's something about leadership that I think we get wrong. We tend to assume that if someone has reached a certain level of success, then they must be a good leader. They built the company, they grew an organization, they got the promotion, people follow them, they have influence. They walk into a room and people listen. And so we look at the results and assume that the person producing them must have the character to match. But those two things aren't always connected because talent can take you somewhere that your character isn't ready to sustain. Charisma, it can get people to follow you. Talent can create opportunities. Intelligence can build a business. Communication skills, those can fill a room. And ambition can drive incredible growth. But none of those things tell me who you are when nobody's watching. And none of them tell me how you treat people when they can no longer do something for you. That's character. And I think one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a leader is for their influence to grow faster than their character. Listen, success doesn't automatically mean character. I've spent a lot of my life around leaders, business leaders, church leaders, real estate leaders, nonprofit leaders, and I've been in leadership for myself quite a long time. And the one thing I've learned is that we give successful people a lot of benefit of the doubt, sometimes way too much. We see what they've built and assume they must know what they're doing, and maybe they do, but knowing how to build something and knowing how to lead people are not necessarily the same skill. You can be incredibly talented and incredibly insecure. You can be successful and still need everyone around you to constantly validate you. You could be charismatic and still manipulate people. You can be a phenomenal communicator and still be terrible at listening. You can know exactly what to say on stage, but have no idea how to apologize backstage. Those things can coexist, and that's uncomfortable because we want leadership to be cleaner than that. We want the successful person to also be the healthy person, but sometimes they're not. And maybe one of the hardest lessons I've learned is this. An organization can be growing and still be unhealthy. Those two things can exist at the same time. Charisma is powerful. And I don't think charisma is bad. I actually think charisma is a gift. Some people naturally walk into a room and people gravitate towards them. Some people can cast vision in a way that makes you believe that anything is possible. That's powerful. We need leaders who can inspire, but charisma becomes dangerous when we confuse it with character. Because charisma tells you, follow me. Character determines what happens to you once you do. That's a completely different question. Think about it. Charisma attracts people. Character determines how you treat the people you've attracted. Charisma can build the team, but character determines whether the team feels safe enough to tell you the truth. Charisma can sell the vision, but character determines whether you're willing to share the credit when that vision succeeds. Charisma, it can get you the position, but character determines what you do with the power that that position gives you. And eventually, leadership gives you power. That's why character matters so much more. Power, it doesn't create character. It reveals it. And I've said this before. I used to think success changed people. I'm not sure now that it does. I think success often reveals people. Pressure reveals, money reveals, influence reveals, power reveals. Because when you're starting out, you need everybody. You need people to believe in you. You need people to give you opportunities. You need relationships. You need help. But success can slowly change the equation. Eventually, you're the person with the opportunity. You're the person with the money. You are the person making the decision. You're the person everyone else needs something from. And that's when character gets tested. How do you treat the person who cannot advance your career? How do you respond when someone disagrees with you? What happens when someone on your team tells you something you don't want to hear? Can you admit you were wrong? Can you apologize without explaining why it wasn't really your fault? Can you celebrate somebody else's success when you aren't getting the attention? Those aren't talent questions, they're character questions. John Maxwell, he talks about this in his book and the idea about high road leadership. And what I appreciate about the idea of taking the high road is that it isn't really about being nice. It's deeper than that. It's about choosing to value people, choosing what's right over what's convenient, choosing humility when your position would allow you to demand your way. And most importantly, doing those things when you don't necessarily get rewarded for them. Because it's easy to have integrity when integrity costs you nothing. It's easy to be generous when you have plenty. It's easy to give someone credit when you already have enough recognition. It's easy to treat people well when they agree with you. Character shows up when you're doing the right thing and it actually costs you something. That's the high road. And the frustrating part, the high road isn't always the fastest road. Sometimes the person cutting corners gets ahead. Sometimes the leader taking all the credit gets promoted. And sometimes the person manipulating everyone around them builds the bigger platform. Sometimes you're watching and you're thinking, how are they getting away with this? But leadership isn't about how quickly you climb. It's about who you're becoming while you climb and what happens to the people climbing with you. There's a story in the Bible that I think illustrates this incredibly well. Saul, he had the position. He was the king. He looked like a king. He had authority. He had influence. He had everything externally that told people this is the leader. And then David enters the picture. And after David starts succeeding, people notice him. They celebrate him. And Saul, he can't handle it. And that's where the character problem starts becoming visible. David's success doesn't create Saul's insecurity. It exposes it. And instead of developing David, Saul becomes threatened by David. Think about how often this still happens in leadership today. A talented person enters the organization. They start doing well. People notice. And an insecure leader doesn't think, how can I help this person become everything they're capable of becoming? They think, is this person coming for my position? That's the difference between leadership built around mission and leadership built around ego. One says, I want you to succeed, and the other says, I want you to succeed as long as your success never threatens me. Those are very different cultures, and people can feel the difference. So the question is, what happens under a leader without character? This is where I think the conversation gets especially important. Because when we talk about character failures in leadership, we usually talk about the leader. They lost the company. They lost the position. They ruined their reputation. They had some public big downfall. But what about everybody else? Because character problems rarely stay contained to the leader. People underneath that leader start adapting. They stop telling the truth. They learn which version of reality the leader wants to hear. They become afraid to make mistakes. They start managing the leader's emotions instead of doing their jobs. And I've seen this firsthand. I remember working in a church environment where there was one leader whose emotions could be so unpredictable that the staff would literally try to figure out what kind of day it was before interacting with her. I mean, which version are we getting today? Is it the good day? Is it a bad day? Is this safe to bring up now? People would avoid conversations because you didn't know what response you were going to get. And when that becomes normal, the entire organization starts paying for it. People stop using their energy to solve problems and they start using their energy to manage the leader. That's an enormous organizational tax. And the crazy part, the church, it was growing. Attendance was growing. Things were happening. So from the outside, you could look at the numbers and say, this must be working. And in some ways, something was working. But growth doesn't automatically mean health. I saw the same thing in the business world. I worked for a startup founder who could be so incredibly volatile. There were calls where I might be cussed out one moment and then praised like I was the greatest person the next. You never quite knew which version you were getting. I was on a trip once in Orlando and a lot of things were going on. But we got in the rental car and he was flying down the freeway like traffic laws were just suggestions. And we were going to a theme park where our client had rented it out for an event. And instead of parking in the parking lot like everybody else, he literally pulled this rental car up on the grass and got out. And I remember thinking, of course you did. Because sometimes power starts convincing people that the rules are there for everyone else. And yet, the company grew. Revenue grew. Investors came in. Eventually, there was a successful sale. And that's what makes this conversation harder because we want bad leadership to always produce bad results. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes unhealthy leaders are brilliant. Sometimes they're visionary. Sometimes they're incredibly persuasive. Sometimes their intensity is even part of why the organization grows, which means the numbers alone cannot be our measurement of whether leadership is healthy. The better question, I think, is what is it costing the people underneath that leader? How many people are afraid to speak honestly? How many people are walking on eggshells? How many good people left? How much talent is being wasted managing someone's emotions? How much energy is being spent working around the leader because of the leader? And sometimes the leader never sees the cost because everyone else gets good at compensating for them. An entire system develops around the dysfunction. People learn, keep your head down, read the room, don't trigger them. Figure out how to get the work done anyway. And then the leader looks at the results and thinks, obviously, I'm doing something right. Maybe, but the results can hide a lot. Results they're not the only scoreboard. This is something I think leaders have to wrestle with. Did the organization grow? Sure. Did revenue increase? Maybe. Did attendance go up? Maybe. Did you hit the goal? Great. But did the people win too? That's the question. Because a leader can create organizational success while leaving a trail of exhausted, fearful, depleted people behind them. And I don't think that's leadership success. I think leadership success has to include what happens to the people we lead. Are they growing? Are they becoming better? Do they feel safe enough to tell us the truth? Can they disagree without fearing retaliation? Do they feel valued beyond what they produce? Because leadership isn't about what gets built. It's about who gets built while you're building it. And this is where I have to turn the camera back on myself. Because it's really easy to watch a video about character and think about somebody else. We all know that leader. We have somebody in your mind right now. But that's not the point. The question isn't, who do I know that needs to hear this? The question is, where does my character need to catch up with my influence? Because I have blind spots too. I can get impatient. I can want things done my way. I can move too quickly. I can put pressure on people without realizing just how much pressure I'm creating. And leadership, it requires me to continually look at those things. Not because I'm a terrible leader, it's because I'm a human one. The moment I start believing that character development is something everybody else needs is probably the moment I need it most. We tend to think character gets tested in huge moments. And sometimes it does. But I think character is built long before the huge moment arrives. It's built when you could take credit and choose not to. When you could hide the mistake, but you admit it instead. When you could send the angry email, but you decide to wait. When someone who works for you tells you something uncomfortable and you resist the urge to defend yourself. When you keep a commitment that nobody knew you would break. When you do the right thing, even though the wrong thing would be easier. Those moments don't make headlines. Nobody applauds them. You probably won't see that posted on Instagram. But those are the moments building the person who eventually has to carry the weight of influence. And I think that's why character development has to happen before you desperately need it. You don't suddenly develop integrity when the crisis comes. You reveal it that you've been developing it all along. You cannot build a platform your character can't carry. This is where I think about something as simple as going to the gym. Let's say someday I want to bench press 300 pounds. Nothing wrong with the goal. But just because I want to bench 300 pounds someday doesn't mean I'm ready to bench it today. Let's say I'm only strong enough to handle 200 pounds. And somebody puts that 300 on the bar because that's where I want to be. The weight isn't going to make me stronger. It's going to crush me. The way I eventually carry 300 pounds is by developing the strength to carry it. A little more weight, a little more resistance, a little more capacity over time. Leadership works the same way. We spend so much time asking for more weight, more responsibility, more influence, more employees, more revenue, bigger organization, a bigger platform. And maybe the better question isn't, can I get there? Maybe it's, am I becoming strong enough to carry it when I do? Because charisma might help somebody put more weight on your bar. Talent might get you promoted faster. A great opportunity might suddenly give you influence you weren't expecting. But none of those things automatically increase your capacity to carry it. Opportunity can happen overnight. Character cannot. Character has to be developed. And just like the gym, sometimes the resistance is what develops you. The difficult employee conversations, the criticism, the mistakes that you have to own, the moment someone challenges you, the moment you don't get the credit, the season where things feel harder than you expected. The resistance isn't necessarily getting in the way of your leadership development. Sometimes the resistance is your leadership development. Maybe some of the resistance in your life right now isn't keeping you from the weight you're asking to carry. Maybe it's training you to carry it. And here's the part leaders really need to understand. Sometimes an underdeveloped leader doesn't get crushed by the weight. Sometimes everyone around them does. The organization may keep growing, the leader may keep succeeding, but everybody underneath them starts carrying the emotional and relational weight that they were never developed enough to handle. And that's not healthy leadership either. So what are you asking for? So maybe the goal shouldn't be, I want more influence. I want the bigger company. Maybe the question should be different. Maybe it should be, God, make me into the kind of person who can carry what I'm asking you to give me. Because bigger isn't always better. Especially if you're not ready for the weight of bigger. More influence means more responsibility. More employees means lives affected by your decision. More followers means more people listening to your words. More money gives you more options. More authority gives you more power, and none of these things make you better. They simply give you more reach to whoever you are. That's why character matters. I have spent a lot of years studying leadership. I've read the books, I've gone to the conferences, I've led organizations and teams. I have made and still am making plenty of mistakes myself. But the older I get, the less impressed I am by charisma alone. I'm impressed by consistency. I'm impressed by humility. I'm impressed by the leaders who say, I was wrong. Leaders who celebrate people who surpass them. Leaders who don't need to be the smartest person in every room. Leaders who treat the person cleaning the building with the same dignity they give the person who writes the biggest check. Leaders whose private life and public life actually look like they belong to the same person. Because talent matters, vision matters, communication matters, strategy matters, charisma, it matters. But character is what carries the weight of it all. So if your influence is growing right now, don't just work on your platform. Work on the person standing on it. Don't just develop your skills, develop your character. Don't just ask, how high can I climb? Ask, who am I becoming on the way up? Because charisma may get you somewhere. Talent may open a door. Influence may give you the platform. But character determines what you do once you get there. And what I've learned is this. The goal isn't simply to become a leader people want to follow. It's to become the kind of leader people are better because they followed.